Good afternoon. Hopefully you can hear me, either through the speakers or the headphones, and if you tune onto the wrong channel you'll get a disco from over the next door, so just be careful which channel you're on. So I did this last year, and I found the screen was so small I had to bring my own printout because my eyesight isn't very good. So let me just do a quick introduction. My name is Beresford. I'm a director at Edgar Dunn & Company. It's a consultancy that specialises in payments and fintech. I've been in the industry for about 25 years, hence the grey hair. I head up the retail payments practice, so looking after usually omni-channel retailers to better optimize their payment acceptance strategy and also their payment issuing strategy, which might be co-brand cards, gift cards, loyalty, etc. Just a little bit, a word on Edgar Dunn. We were founded in 1978 in San Francisco. We've gradually grown to become a global organization. We operate out of 6 offices around the world, and we do hundreds of projects, not just with retailers but also suppliers to retailers, along as they're within the value chain, within the payments value chain, so acquirers, payment networks, and PSPs, etc. So that's enough about Edgar Dunn, or EDC for short. I'm going to start with a summary at the beginning. So this is the key takeaways from this presentation. There's 4 key takeaways. Firstly, what's changed over the last 5 to 10 years? Payment methods are a lot more complicated in the last 10 to 15 years. Payment methods are a lot more friendly for consumers to use. It's not just cards. Cards are not just the only payment method, and quite often those payment methods are actually more friendly in terms of security and checkout process. Secondly, consumers have got an enormous choice in terms of what's available online, in terms of their e-commerce options, their ability to research products and services and understand what to buy and do comparisons of prices, etc. So choice is enormous. Thirdly, growth over the last, and partly driven by the pandemic, but growth in e-commerce is enormous growth, and we'll get into that detail. There's new channels, there's new marketplaces, there's new segments of consumers that retailers are targeting. And lastly, retailers are using and selling their products and services across a variety of channels, and realise the importance of being multi-channel, or actually omni-channel, more appropriately used nowadays. And I think there are inevitably complexities around that. We'll go into that in more detail, around payment acceptance and reconciliation of those payments that you accept on your site. So that's some of the key takeaways from today. What's this going to mean in the next 3 to 5 years? And there's 3 points I want to make here. So payment optimization is a super important activity a lot of merchants are making and paying a lot more attention to. Payment is actually further up on the agenda, even talked about at board level on a regular basis in terms of payment acceptance, and not just payment acceptance, but the need to make it more efficient, look for cost efficiencies and revenue opportunities. So it's about revenue optimization, not just about cost reduction. Secondly, um, payment orchestration, which is the main topic of today, is that it's a hot topic. It's really dramatically changed the landscape for retailers. It's given retailers a new option to allow them greater reach, greater geographic reach, greater access to different payment options, and it actually allows them to simplify those interfaces that they have with those different payment service providers. And then lastly, payment orchestration has been, although a blessing in disguise really, but I think because it's fairly nascent, the payment orchestration platforms that are being provided today are relatively new, and they're offering this middle layer to merchants, but it's actually quite complex to implement because there's very a lot of diversity in the landscape of payment orchestration. We'll get into that detail. So that's the summary. So what does that mean in terms of joining the dots? Let's first of all talk about alternative forms of payment. These are alternative to cards, so it's a credit and debit. So I think if you go back 10 or 11 years, it was quite small, maybe 12% proportion in terms of value of transactions online. I think today you'll find it's around 44%, and in the future the expectation of the value transactions online will be, half of them will be alternative, or as I prefer, appropriate payments, appropriate for the consumer to use, because that's what they are comfortable with using in their local market or in their local retailer. So alternative forms of payment is super important, and as we've seen over the last 20 odd years, the payment methods, there's probably about 300, 400 of them around the world, and it's still growing. Admittedly, some of them maybe died a death and not survived, but it is growing. In terms of the e-commerce volume and value, we're spending more. I think I mentioned earlier in terms of the pandemic has slightly fueled that growth in e-commerce, but the expectations it continues to grow. Although growth year on year might be not as much, but it's still significant. Around the world, it can represent 35% of total retail sales. 35% of total retail sales. Obviously in emerging markets in Africa, Middle East, it may be smaller, but in more developed markets it's not unusual to have 35% of your sales online. So growth is obviously, and we're spending a lot more per capita. Now, in terms of what does that mean for a retailer, for a merchant, there's a lot of complexity around payment acceptance. Everything from cart abandonment to chargebacks. Those challenges exist every day, and those challenges are a bit of a burden on retailers to keep abreast of all the dynamic changes in the market in terms of payment, and to be able to accept lots of different payment methods and respond to changing demand. So it's challenging. So what does this mean? Retailers are having to look at payment from a 360-degree diagnostic. They take a holistic approach to payments to try and find efficiencies and look for new revenue sources with payments. As I said, a payments as an agenda item is higher up on the retailer's agenda. We've found that big retailer can talk about menswear, fashion retailer can talk about menswear, women's wear, and then payments is really, really high up on the agenda. So it's that important at board level. So what does that mean in terms of payment orchestration? I think before payment orchestration, and it's relatively new, as I mentioned, we've found that retailers, as they've grown, either through acquisition or expansion into other markets, or they've grown through new brands, new channels, they've had to build lots of interfaces integrated into different payment methods, different payment service providers, alternative forms of payment, buy now, pay later, etc. And so that's been a challenge, and it's an enormous IT burden. There's a constant change. These interfaces are constantly changing. The payment service providers change the interface every 6 months. If you've got 10 interfaces to build and maintain, it's an enormous overhead. And that is adding to the complexity for retailers. It's not necessarily they have the DevOps skills in-house to be able to do that and keep abreast of what's happening. So, what's happening is that there is a new breed of payment service provider, a POP, or payment orchestration platform, that is being introduced into the ecosystem over the last 5-10 years. And the payment orchestration platform is offering a kind of a middle layer, acting as an interface between the merchant and all that complexity of payment service providers. So in essence, what does that mean in terms of the principal objective of payment orchestration is really simplification. It's simplification through taking away the IT burden, so you have one single interface into the payment orchestration layer. Let them have all the complexity and the maintenance and the IT issues with the payment service providers. It introduces efficiency into the payment processing. It can increase authorization rate. It can route and find least cost payment processing, and more importantly, it's a revenue opportunity. You can optimize your revenue through a payment orchestration platform. So, my clicker isn't clicking. So there's 3 core elements of a payment orchestration platform. Is the checkout, so making it really super efficient for the consumer to engage with the retailer at the checkout. Routing, so that's sending the transaction to the most appropriate payment method and payment service provider, and then settlement in terms of disbursement of the funds and around reporting and reconciliation. So that's essentially it. But payment orchestration is actually a number of other things. It's offering tokenization, a vault, automatic reconciliation, a dashboard, alerts, and it's giving a lot more data-rich information to retailers. Now, how to implement a payment orchestration platform? You could go out to a variety of methods. There's the in-house method, and there's a lot of big retailers that have built their own payment orchestration platform over the last 10-15 years, and they've been very successful at that. It's obviously not for everyone, not everyone's cup of tea. It has to be a big retailer to be able to support that type of development. Typically airlines, hotel operators, large tier 1 retailers can do this. Full stack or integrated solutions, I'll come on to that, and agnostic providers. I'm going to give you a few examples, and it is a few examples, I promise you, because I do not want to promote any brand over another brand, because I'm an independent consultant. But full stack providers are now offering payment orchestration type of solutions. I can see a few of you taking photographs here. I can guarantee over the last 3 years, we've been developing a database of payment orchestration platform solutions, and that database started off 3 years ago, 5 entries. We now have 51 entries in this database of organizations that are providing payment orchestration platform solutions in a variety of ways. The majority of them are the agnostic providers, and they're the new kids on the block. Average age of these companies, 7 or 8 years old, so they're not even a teenager. And then obviously the full stack providers, the likes of Checkout, Zeus, they're full stack providers that have bought payment orchestration capabilities in-house. And it is a bit of an oxymoron, but they are, to a fashion, providing payment orchestration. So it's the agnostic ones that are kind of interesting. So as I said, there's 51 providers on our database. In terms of a vertical, we haven't actually seen which particular vertical where payment orchestration makes sense, but it's new. It's as early days. This is fairly nascent. How do you evaluate 51 different providers of payment orchestration platforms? Well, to be honest, you don't. You have to prioritize. Each of those payment orchestration platform providers are at a different stage of their development. Some of them are new startups that are just barely 18 months, 2 years old. Others are 15 years old. So you have to prioritize. You have to look for what you need now, what you need next, and what you need later. This is super important because all those payment orchestration platforms are also evolving their capabilities and adding new functionality and capabilities to their offering. And that's where you must understand the landscape of their roadmap and their development. So ask about what is being provided on day one, and what is being provided as your minimum viable product when you go live. There's certain basic foundation things that you must have and that you must ask your payment orchestration platform provider. So payment orchestration isn't easy, it's just hard work. Now, it takes practice, it takes skill, and so what we've done as a business, as an independent business, we've developed a guide that will allow you to understand what payment orchestration is, how to evaluate payment orchestration. These are the key questions you should be asking yourself about payment orchestration. And I'd like you to, help yourself to the guide. If there's any information you want over and above what's in the guide, then we're happy to support you in your own development roadmap. So I've kind of rattled through that. So what I'd like to do is ask the audience, are there any questions about payment orchestration? Are there any questions about the marketplace, how it's evolving, and how we're seeing this business make an impact on the landscape of retail? Don't all rush at once. Anything you'd want to recap on, or anything you don't understand? Or there's a question over there. I don't know whether there's a roaming mic. There is. There's a roaming mic.
Can you hear me? Good. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Could you share any thoughts on how tokenization in a context where a retailer might be having transactions routed to different payment providers works? So how can you have a single customer view if your customer could be routed to different providers?
That's a very good question. Oh God. So tokenization. Can payment orchestration platforms offer tokenization solutions to retailers when they're having to route transactions to a variety of payment service providers, whether it's Barclays, WorldPay, Adyen, or whatever? The quick answer is yes, and they are doing it, but they're offering their own token vault, and taking away some of the burden from you as a retailer, if you're a retailer, and offering it as part of their solution. Not all of them do, and some of them are more leaning towards network tokens, which are the tokens which are offered through the likes of Visa and MasterCard. So the short answer is yes, but in reality, you really do have to talk to your payment orchestration platform, understand where they are in their development roadmap, whether it's their own token or whether they're using network tokens, or having to find a kind of a hybrid solution as they route transactions to the variety of service providers that you have to connect to. I don't know whether, I think that was a thumbs up. Any other questions? There's a mic. I think there's a mic knocking around, and I've got 2 minutes.
Hi. Is there any specific accounting softwares that are generally recommended as being very good for accepting all the different types of integrations that can come from these payment solutions? Well, our company currently uses Xero, for example, and I wonder how easy it is to integrate with these functions, or if we would be better off looking for something else.
That's a good question. Another good question. Two good questions is very good. I'm going to repeat the question just for the benefit of the audience. I think your question was about accounting software. So obviously in terms of reconciliation of the payments and the settlement and the banking services at the back end, you want to know whether the payment orchestration platforms themselves can integrate to that type of software. Is that a kind of a nod? He wants to ask a clarification question, but maybe. He just needs to clarify.
Yes? Sorry. And if there is a recommendation as to, are there softwares out there that are better, or companies that are better than others at dealing with the POP sort of services?
Okay. So in terms of accounting and back-end reconciliation, I believe today payment orchestration platforms aren't quite there. They've focused in the last few years in terms of being able to gain greater reach, greater alternative forms of payment, and integration to the different payment service providers that are out there around the world. That's what their focus has been. The back-end reconciliation, accounting, clearing and settlement has been lower down on their agenda. It is on the agenda, but today we're not aware of any integrations to the likes of Xero or any other accounting software today. So to answer, is there a better one? Then I don't think we're at that stage. Cool. I think I'm being pulled off. Thanks.